Hi, I'm JC from CloudWorks. I recently had the fantastic opportunity to sit down with two of our customers that have been paving the way with Agentforce. Saksham, who's the Chief Data Science Officer at Allegis APAC, and Ben, who's the Head of Architecture and Digital at MPM Group. We were able to ask them why now? Why did they get involved in this technology early? And what was it that was so compelling about it for their business? And I think you're going to love to hear what they had to say. Here's the clip. So what I want to kind of ask to start off with is, why were you guys out in front? This tech is kind of very, very new. I've got a lot of people that I'm talking to constantly about, how real is it? And here you guys are already making this stuff happen. So maybe, Saksham, what was it that meant Allegis is like, we've actually got to pioneer this, we've got to get in early? Because you guys have been basically doing LLM on platform even pre-Agentforce, is that right?
Yes, absolutely. So if we look at our workforce, the internal workforce, till date, we have been doing everything manually. Now, you look at our recruiters, you look at the sales people. When they meet the candidates, they meet the customers, they retrieve all that information manually, they process all that information manually for each and every customer and the candidate. They're looking at finding the right opportunities, they're looking at finding the right candidates for the customers. Right. And if you look at time being spent across each and every candidate or customer, you can literally see that to come with a solution for a customer or a candidate, they literally have to spend an enormous time, right, processing all that information in the handwritten notes that you have, when you have spoken to the customers, understanding, processing them in your brain, and then putting it into the CRM.
Right. Because you guys already, just to interrupt it, you guys have already done a fairly extensive digital transformation with Salesforce. I think this is a really important point, that you already have large amounts of automation. It's not, people sometimes call this a manual process. You actually have extensive best practice use of Salesforce, but you said something there, people are having to think about the information. They're still having to process the information to get it into the system. Is that right? That's the challenge?
The biggest challenge is, now, for example, right, a candidate is, a recruiter actually meets a candidate, right? Now, he or she goes through the CV. And then you're looking at the entire CV and then you think, oh, what would be the right opportunity for this person based on the interests or based on the skills, right? And then you're also thinking about the customer, or the customer had told me that the requirements are this. Is the candidate a good fit for that particular role? Is something that will keep going on in your mind. And you literally want to please both of them, ensuring that you create a balance. But that particular thought process that goes into your mind until you come to a solution, I think that's quite challenging for any recruiter, I would say.
I think that's such an important point, is that, again, it's not about dramatic process automation, although of course there's benefit. It's the fact that your core business is relying on a highly trained individual to do a cognitive load, and we're not replacing those people. We're actually helping them with something which is quite a lot of thought. Now, I want to just verify, because I think this mirrors.
It does.
Basically what's happening with MPM Group, yeah? What can you tell us there, Ben?
So we have such a broad range of needs and requirements from our clients, again, being in the disability sector, and providers are time poor, and again, of course, wildly vary in how they operate, and you've got your big players and you've got your sole traders. So the needs of each individual client provider, they're all different. And not to go into the nitty-gritty of the scheme, but it is so complex and it changes constantly. And then at the client level individually, their individual plan will actually speculate little additions or subtractions on top of it. So
can we touch on that for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry. So this is actually, from an architecture perspective, people are getting their head around this idea of RAG. So retrieving things and putting it into the LLM.
Yeah.
For the folks at home, if you didn't know, retrieval augmented generation, you can look it up. But this process, for you guys, you've actually got this document that's actually basically unique. The idea behind the initiative is that this is a unique plan for every individual that can effectively retrieve the funding. Is that right?
That's right.
So you've got people who have to not just know the policy, they have to actually read this little novel about every single one of the people that you're evaluating eligibility for. Have I got that right?
That's right, yeah. And so if you have a client who has a particular need and they've called in, for example, our operator sitting on the line, they're not going to have time to read through the entirety of the plan, get the nitty-gritty detail right, compare it against what new price guide might have dropped yesterday. And again, expanding that across all our client base, you can really see the need for this real personalized experience in a way that's just not feasible right now.
Yeah. I mean, that right there for me is such an important, again, the parallel between the two is that there's an enormous amount of handwritten, but also typed and disparate documents that go into matching the needs of the employer and the needs of the person. And likewise, we're now seeing, right, to get the best outcomes for the NDIS, you want a tailored and bespoke plan for the individual, but the result of that is, again, we're having to match a very unique thing with a very unique thing. And that I think is what people are misunderstanding about the technology, is the way that it's helping, to your point, it's helping people who are already doing a lot of thinking to have something else help them with the thinking rather than just new automation. Wow, like I said, amazing videos. If you like that, check out the entire interview because it is packed full of information that we are trying to get out to anybody who is interested in understanding generative AI, actually looking at implementing agentic AI like Agentforce in their organizations, or is just trying to get their head around all the buzzwords because we keep coming up with a new one almost every week. Check out the whole interview at www.cloudworks.co. I know you're going to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed interviewing them, and thank you for your time.